Looking at you, I'll be talking over here, so just no offense. If you have any questions, just let me know. Okay. Okay, so want to sit? That way I kind of go over with
What
you.
if I should record this?
I'm recording it.
Okay, and
You
the
can
report's going to
record.
be very detailed. Okay? So anything you don't get right now, don't worry, it'll definitely be covered. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. Are you pulling permits for the property? Is that something that's going to be done?
As agents, we don't pull permits.
Okay.
The buyer can pull permits.
But we recommend that you pull permits.
Yes.
You just drive down the street, walk up to the counter, give the address, and in 10 minutes you'll have all the permits.
Yeah, and I know you can do it online too, some way.
It's
you know.
in the city of Burbank, the easiest way
Just go
is
in.
to walk up to the counter. It's
Perfect.
the
Walk up.
easiest
That's
thing that you can
that
imagine.
way
I'll
over
tell you
there?
where it is.
Okay.
Yeah, she's got, that's good advice there.
Okay.
What you're looking for is when you get the permits, you're going to look for something that will have to do with just the chimney. Because this chimney was a one-off, meaning somebody pulled a permit strictly for this. This type of repair would have required a permit. So let me preface that with, there should be a permit on record. It shouldn't be attached to anything else, it'll just be for the chimney. Within that permit, it's going to say the date that the permit was pulled, which is the reconstruction date. If you get that in the next day or so, send it to me, because I'll have the report out over the weekend. So if you happen to get it, let me know, because that'll just help for me to put some information in the report. Okay?
Okay.
Back to the framing. We were talking about wood framing versus steel stud framing. I suspect it's steel studs because there are screws in the top plate. Normally when it's wood, it's going to be nails, not screws. So that's good news because they're metal screws. They're made for metal on metal. Okay? But you won't know until they lift the cover. So that's the only thing. And there's no way, I could lift it today, but I'm not going to be able to seal it the way that it's sealed up now. And anything I lift, there's always a chance that if it's not sealed up right, you don't buy the house, now there's a potential for water intrusion. Okay?
So would that be on the permit that?
Just the date of construction. This other stuff I'm going to talk about in terms of what's needed for repair. Okay? Alright, so what was done is, as we know, Angel, this was rebuilt from roughly the smoke chamber, which is right about here.
Okay.
Okay, and then it was rebuilt. Very common with any Northridge post-94 earthquake repair. It's called a retrofit. They took down the brick, they recoated the chamber, they built back up with a metal pipe, and I suspect it's steel stud framing. That'll be verified based on the date of construction, as well as part of the repairs. They have to open the top anyway. They're going to see what's inside. So I put in the report what they're supposed to look for. Okay? With the construction of the chimney's solid. The firebox is solid. The internal chamber is in pretty good shape, though some of the coating that was done is cracking. When we get up inside the chimney pipe, it's a very common pipe that was used. The cap on the top is failing, so they've got to replace that. This thing inside the fireplace is your damper control, right here. Okay? When you do this type of chimney replacement, you're not supposed to have a top damper. That's what that is. It's a damper that goes inside the pipe.
Which is like opens and closes it? Is that
That's exactly right. It opens the flue and closes the flue. Okay? Now, the purpose of a damper, they didn't install them in the 20s. They really weren't installed until around 1942.
Yeah.
So when you find them as a retrofit, they're supposed to put it in right here in the throat with a blade and a handle. This type of pipe was never approved for a top damper. So because it was never approved and it's not the manufacturer's part, you're not supposed to have it. Because it can alter what happens at the top of the chimney. It can jam up and plug, and that affects the function, both drafting or smoke getting back in the house. So whenever you're dealing with a metal chimney, you have to use manufacturer's parts. If the manufacturer did not approve it, you can't do it. In this case, the manufacturer did not approve that top damper. The damper is going to be pulled out. The cap has to be replaced because there's some damage to it. The pipe is a bit short of what it should be. It's supposed to stand 12 inches above the top of the chimney. It doesn't. So that top piece needs to be replaced. The metal cover at the top of the chimney doesn't have the necessary air gaps and spacers under the surface, which are also something required by the manufacturer so that the framing can breathe. So that has to be replaced. So back to what I was saying about the framing, once this is all opened, they're going to see on the inside of it, and they're going to know what you have. The only thing that would change my recommendation would be as if they find wood framing within the chimney structure. If they find wood framing, some additional corrections will be needed. Okay, and those corrections would include having to open up the framing, open up some of the stucco, replace any wood that's around the masonry, attached between the metal and the masonry, and then close it back up. Okay, so It's not impossible to do, it just adds time and some expense to it. So the kicker is gonna be, is it steel frame or is it wood frame? If you show me
We're not definitively going to find out,
until the top is open, or
the
permit.
date,
Yeah,
the
date
date of the
sensitive.
permit. So the dates that you're concerned about,
Yeah.
what's the
January.
range?
January 94 to say, let's go a little further, let's say November of 94. Typically I say January to August, but sometimes there's bleed over. So say January to November, okay?
So those are the danger dates.
Yeah, put it this way, anything in 94, let me know about it. Because then that could be area of concern. These chimneys typically take 3 weeks to rebuild, but back in 94, there were cases where it was taking 3 months. You'll see a permit pulled in July and it wasn't finished till December, till August, October. And it just happens to be how busy were guys, how efficient, how good were they at their job. That also has a lot to do with it, okay?
So can you do a quick, just bullet point?
Yeah.
Of what you know needs to be.
Absolutely. So we'll cover it from the top to bottom, okay? We'll start with the bottom here, your fireplace. This thing in front of our fireplace here is called the hearth extension. This hearth extension has wood forms in the crawl space which are not supposed to be there. The wood should have been removed when this chimney was built. They forgot. Now I find it 80% of the time with a 1920s house that the wood is still there. But once they replace the tile, they should have pulled all the forms out as well. So now somebody has to go into the house, pull the forms out, replace it with steel studs, okay? Again, it's a fairly common occurrence, so guys know what to do and how to do it, but it's something that definitely needs to be fixed. And the reason being is, any future earthquakes, the floor can move independent from the face, because this is more or less supported by the house where the chimney's on its own base. In the fireplace, there's already some fracturing on the floor, and what happens is that when those fractures occur, you can get heat transferred to the wood forms that are underneath the hearth extension, okay? So that's something that's one of the first areas of repair. Inside the firebox, they have to get rid of the damper. Now, you can always have a throat damper installed, though I don't recommend it. Because the way this chimney was built, it's already a tight throat.
You want me
put
to
a
turn
damper
that
in
off? You want me to turn it off or just let it ring through?
Is that yours?
Yeah.
Okay. You want me to just hit,
We can
don't
just,
answer?
we
Is
can
one on silent?
just let it ring through or just hit red.
I just hit the
It's a
red.
Off.
slide, it's a
It's
slide.
not,
Oh well.
it's not,
Right.
different
I just didn't know how many
phone.
times it was gonna ring and
Mine does 100.
interrupt our.
So anyway, so they have to repair the hearth extension, repair the floor, pull the damper. You can always put one in the throat, though I think that it may affect how the fireplace draws, okay? Because the drafting of the fireplace, we talked about this with your dad, right? When you're designing a firebox, the throat is very crucial. Because the chimney was never built with a throat damper, anything you put in there, to some extent, is gonna restrict the throat. But that really is your only option, because this pipe doesn't have an approval for a top damper. So you either go with that one, or you put one in the throat. Okay, those are the two options.
So you're saying stay with this one or
Get rid of this one.
This he's saying
Have to get rid
has
of,
to be
yeah.
replaced.
But you're
And you're
saying
recommending
Not having one.
not having a
having
period.
one at all.
Not having one, period.
Take
Yeah.
it. How do you take it out? I mean, is
That's easy. The guys who do the repairs, they just slip it out the top, unbolt the cable, and take it out. So that's easy. The purpose of a damper is just to control energy when the fireplace is not in use. So your air conditioning is not going up the chimney,
yeah.
and your heating is not going up the chimney. Okay? That's the only purpose. Now, to handle that problem, you can always put glass doors on the fireplace. Because if you close the doors, it's going to serve the same purpose as a damper. And in my opinion, with a chimney of this age, that's a better option than putting a damper in. Have a glass door set made. Okay?
Yeah, they're kind of ugly though.
Well, no, there are some really good ones. No, you go to a fireplace store, they'll design a frame, a real low profile frame.
They have to, do they mount it on there? Or
Yeah, they'll mount it within the firebox opening, within the
Look at
top.
the
That's
casino
good.
fireplace ones, because they make some beautiful,
Make
really
beautiful
cool
doors.
stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
some can be, you have an extra liver to sell. I mean, some are expensive, but I mean,
That's
they're.
a good point.
But,
Do you have a liver to give?
no, I mean,
Or kidney?
So I'm sorry,
Yeah.
what were you saying to?
no, some of the enclosures are beautiful, really, really nice.
But he's saying they're costly.
Yeah. right?
Well, not necessarily, I mean,
They-
you
no, they
can
can
spend
be.
a fortune on it.
You can
but
spend
I mean,
$1,000 on a pretty decent.
But you don't
person,
have to, you can
know.
get like a nice black frame, it's kind of nondescript, it's some,
Yeah.
customers are not too bad.
But that's the option. My, I don't have a damper on mine. My house is 1927, so I live with it. There's always airflow.
I don't think I have one either.
Yeah, it is the way it is. So they weren't required till 1982 as part of an energy conservation code. When the guy rebuilt this, he had the option to put a pipe in that had a damper. But then again, if this was 95, 96, it wasn't around then. So he went with what he had. This is an aftermarket piece that chimney sweeps sell because they make money on it. They probably sold that for $400, but it was never approved by the flue pipe, which is why you can't use it. And I always say, even if it's functioning with it in there, if it ever failed, your insurance, your warranty could be null and void because you put an aftermarket part in. So it's not worth that potential for a problem. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And that's a safety issue, obviously.
It is a safety issue because it can gum up and there's no way to see if the damper is fully open. And that's the problem with it, is that when the unit is not made for it, let's say you're pulling that
The
cable
door's open.
and you
Thank
think
you.
that the cable is opening the damper, but it's not, and you go to light a fire, you get carbon monoxide and smoke back in the house.
That's really important.
It's incredibly important. In my opinion, it is. That's why anything that is not approved by the manufacturer, to me, is important, regardless of the subjectivity of I've used it, it's worked. It doesn't matter. If the manufacturer didn't approve it, they've got the big bucks. They've got the deep pockets. So if they never approved it, I don't know any better than they do. And I sure as heck don't have deeper pockets than they do.
And especially the point that you made regarding if there were an issue, a fire per se, insurance could say null and void on your coverage because it is an aftermarket piece. So that's really, really important.
Yeah, that's always my concern. I agree with you. Okay, so then the next area. Are we clear on that? Cool?
Yeah.
Okay, so now between the firebox opening and where the pipe starts is called the smoke chamber. They wrapped it and they coated it with a cement type material that's heat rated. Based on the fibers that are in there, it looks to be a material by a company called Chamber Tech. Okay? That material is cracking, and it's cracking right behind the tile traveling up the chimney, so it needs to be patched. There's another thing about this type of material when they use it. There's a strip. It's a stainless steel strip that runs along the inside. It's called a J-bead. This doesn't have it, and that's part of the reason why it's cracking.
What's it called? A
A
JB?
J-bead, yeah. And so in my report, it's going to say